need to.
You really don't need to, maybe. But I will present this to the board. There's the new program component, which we have covered actually in our audit budget finance committee. There are a couple of notes here I'd like to draw our attention to. I hope you don't mind, my back is I'll turn a couple times. I wanted to call our attention to the mission real quick. A lot is happening in the world, as we know, and there's a lot that's shaking down from state ed, a lot of guidance, a lot of concern, I would say, and just to let the board know that I think when it comes to trying to take a temperature of everyone in the district, it could be the board, it could be the students, the parents, the staff, certainly, administrative team, what do I do if? How do I handle blank? I like to go back to the mission, and there's some key words in there. And since we made this mission, the goals, several years ago, I just really want to focus on the mission when it says, speaks to our school culture. So our mission is pretty clear. We want a school culture, one that equips our students to be the people we want to send out in the world, first of all. And it talks about a fully engaged culture of continuous improvement. It talks about having a diversity there, and the knowledge we need to impart to our students so that they go out into the world and make good decisions. And then when we got to goals, which is on page 5, it struck me that we set goals, number 2, specific social emotional learning, to produce a safe and caring environment for our students. So when answering questions in my mind or for others, I always start with these goals, and it helps me so much. We made a point to prioritize social and emotional learning. We made a priority in District Goal 3 to prioritize happiness in our staff and our administration. And moving to the next goals, we talked about physical health of the district, and that's primarily what this presentation is all about. And we talk about equitable, ongoing, changing needs of our students. And I anticipate that we're in a spot in history right now where more changes happening around us than ever before. And it's going to be pretty compelling to make informed decisions, to create an atmosphere where people feel like they can count on the superintendent. Because what I heard today in my little, what are called, webinars or whatever, you know, if you have a question about this, go to the superintendent. If you have a question about this, go to the superintendent. If you have a question about this, go to the superintendent. And so there's an awful lot of pressure out there, and I just want you to know that I think we have a good mission in place. I think we have good goals in place. And if we just focus on those, I think that's where we originate our answers from. And so we can actually go on to page 7 now, which is the draft of the expenditures. Nothing has really changed there. I just wanted to call to your attention that we are at an administrative increase that we covered at 2.62%, well within the typical customary increases that we experience. The capital component is a little higher this year than it has been, 6.24%. We explain the reasons for that. And here we are at program component budget, and you're seeing it for the first time, really, that we're looking at a 3.31% increase. And that is pretty much in line with the previous year, which was 2.62%. So in the ballpark of the increases, we're really looking at increases due to salary, benefits, postage services, transportation, even supplies and materials and things like that. We pretty held the line on that. So if we go to revenues, that's page 8. Just to remember that we are getting a 2% increase in the foundation aid, which is wonderful. We are seeing less aid in the other categories, though. So we do have total increase, but it's very nominal. And we are going out with this budget for a tax levy increase of 2.99%, which has not changed since last month. And we don't expect it to change. I think any questions so far? I just want to get those slides out of the way. With your permission, I can move past page 9, which is, it talks about the foundation aid, and you see a holistic increase of 1.31%, or $335,000, just about 3% of the tax levy. I'm going to move right ahead to the program component, if I could, and that we find on page 20, or slide 26. Zoom past here. There we go. So the largest share of the program increase year is always instruction. We are looking at a 5.55% increase. That is due to salary increases. We have an additional business teacher in that figure. Interfund transfers have not changed. We're seeing less or a downscale in employee benefits, and that is interesting because our actual costs for dental and health is down, but it's actually budgeted closer to the actual cost. And that's one area that we typically would have added a little bit more cushion just for the volatility though. But looking at this budget, it's a much tighter look at each line item in the budget because we didn't want to increase spending year to year. We also wanted to get to that point where we're a little bit more realistic about projected costs. TRS is up about 10% next year, and 15.2% for ERS. So we do see pretty big increases there. We are seeing transportation increases. That's just due to salaries, really. And our contract with Brown's STA gives them a 4% CPI increase next year. That's in our contract. It says whatever the CPI is what we will be increasing. We're still underspending what we used to spend by over $1 million, so in good shape. Now the draft program, next page 27. I just want to speak to this a little bit. You're seeing the total for instruction, that increase there again due to salary benefit increases. Generally, there's a business teacher. One thing I'd like to explain, this budget supports 3 contingency positions, which is customary for us. We typically build in a few extra teaching positions because we never know what we're going to get sometimes. One of those contingencies, I'm recommending that we bring back as a fully funded, certified library media specialist. So we're back to our goal of having one at least at Knox, Warren, and GJSD. Now we do have 2 full-time folks right now at Knox in high school. I'd love to bring on that 3rd if we can find one. I don't know if we're going to do that, but that would be ideal. And the reason for that, you can imagine, is in this age, I just got done talking about how things are changing. We need professionals to be able to explain to our children how to be critical thinkers, how to discern information more than ever. And that's really, it's a significant primary focus of library media specialists. And if we can't find a library media specialist, I would recommend that we find a certified teacher who can do the job, because that's possible, and we can do that. So I don't know if you have any questions about that. Other than that, it's pretty simple. I mean, the increases. Slide 28, we're looking at the total program component increase of just over $1 million. This program component justifies about 65% of that total program budget in salary and benefits. The following pages, you can look at this. I pretty much formulate this so it's hearing ready. So I want this to be ready now in case we have to go to public with it, which we are actually tonight. But the actual public hearing on the budget is done. So I go into the next page just trying to explain what we're getting in this budget essentially. I wanted to remind the board that we are still sustaining our universal pre-K. program. We can't ever forget about our comprehensive instructional program. We talked about that in our retreat and all the pieces of that. Our long-range financial planning is significant. This budget plays a big role in that. Multi-tiered systems supports, that tends to evolve. We now sometimes call that multi-tiered systems support integration. I resist that because I think it's already integrated. I think Johnstown was 5 years ahead of that because we were already talking about behavioral health, emotional and social health. But we have a good MTSSI plan. Technology and library, we're going to continue to head in the direction of computer science, computer internet literacy, ethics, engineering, that sort of area of technology next year. Not to forget our 8th grade students, technology curriculum requirements, focusing on computer science and literacy, which is a shift from tradition. The district will staff the libraries, as I explained, and we hope to bring an emphasis on critical thinking more than ever. There's the business component. Developing a business program for Johnstown is something we would have loved to have done. We would have loved to have never cut our business program, which we did and had to do. But bringing that back will help us to realize the Portuguese graduate goals that are coming from the state. Focus on career planning, financial literacy, entrepreneurship. And I have a feeling this is kind of a fledgling program, and we don't know yet how extensive it will be one day from grades 5 through 12. How will that business program look one day? So we're getting a start on it by adding that business teacher next year. Just to talk about the dynamic growth the district has had, I changed the word before growth. I think it was continuous last year. I changed it to dynamic because our data goes up and down. It ebbs and flows, and you're going to see that later on this next month when the comprehensive data report comes out. But we are still focusing on the science of reading. I've always believed in it, and we are also out ahead of that. Our social, emotional, academic learning, our team, our SEAL team, continuing to support that. We had another 94% graduation rate for the 2nd year in a row. I would love to see that climb, but 94% is nothing to sneeze at. It's very good, and so that's nice and consistent. Finally, on slide 32 is just a summary for you of what we're looking at in terms of the total budget, what state aid, roughly 2/3 of our budget is paid for by state aid, 1/3 by the local taxpayer, and then other revenue, and the use of our appropriate fund balance and reserves. I don't think this is new information, but that's kind of where we are at the moment. Any questions? And you remember the fund balance is high, but we also have to spend that down some.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. 3 on the agenda is comments from the public. On agenda and non-agenda items. The Board of Education welcomes district residents, parents, students, and other people to our meeting. Community involvement in board meetings is encouraged so that we can better understand your views. Please be aware that individual student information or particular personnel issues will not be discussed by this board during public session. When recognized by the board president, please state your name and address. Statements are restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes. Speakers will be notified by the board president when the time is expired. When speaking, the public shall direct their comments to the board and not restrict staff or other audience members. Speakers shall not expect board members to answer questions during public comment. Questions shall be referred to the superintendent or his designee for review, study, and response. If appropriate, the board may request the issue be a discussion item at a future Board of Education meeting or Board of Education committee. Is there anybody here who wishes to address the board at this time? 6.
Couple of 3 comments on a couple of agenda items. The trust agreement, it said it was attached but it wasn't actually attached to the agenda, the amended trust agreement. So just in the, like that, it would be great to see that. And in regard to policy 3311, I hope the board will consider this information, consider notifying the employee when the FOIL request is made rather than waiting until the district responds. The way was just telling me there was like a 5-day window. Just out of courtesy to that employee, it would be good to know as soon as possible. And I hope that we are all in agreement that counseling memos are not disciplinary and would not be included in any disclosure of records. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're a little bit ahead of schedule. We're still waiting for Will Stock to join us closer to 6:30. So we're going to move ahead to the superintendent's report. We'll come back to the ABCD award winners in a little while. Okay, so Dr. Crenshaw, take it away.
Okay, I'm not going to talk through all this, so you have to know, but I did include my report, which I don't always do, but there's a lot to it. So I thought there's some details you wanted to hear about. I did want to start out by talking about communication and safety. We did attend this webinar, Access to Students, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It's all the rage and talk right now. And typically, you know, schools have been safe zones, so in churches, that may no longer be the case. What changed January 21st was essentially the presidential executive order, stepping up immigration enforcement laws. I use words here, but I'm comfortable with it. They are called, among legal circles, veiled threats of civil and criminal action against non-cooperative state and local entities and individuals, which include us, our administration, and it puts people in a tough spot. We're talking about immigration raids at schools, demands for information, and records that may reveal status of students. None of this has, I can't say that none of it's come to our school yet, but it certainly has had some, I mean, some of this has come to us because we do have parents and students who are, you know, and we've got to go over the words, but, you know, immigrants, you know, whether they're legal, illegal, alien, you know, there are lots of definitions to get through, but we have these folks, and we were assured today by attorneys for our law firm out of Syracuse that there are cases and laws that should make us feel generally comfortable with this, that nothing can really be done to allow ICE to come in and remove students without lots of well, judicial orders, yeah, but there's some resistance there, and I think we can feel comfortable that we have our ability to resist that just for the protection of students. We talked a little bit about the function of our SRO and the local police. We talked about messaging. I think something I haven't done yet, but I need to do is send messaging out to staff and administration to talk about records assets, FOIL requests, student enrollment, secretaries. We've got to hit our guidance, our SEAL staff, because these are the folks who are going to be in the front lines answering questions. And, you know, I've written some notes there that are just my thoughts, really, but you can read them for yourself. We have a directory policy. I don't know how aware you are of that, but essentially it affects how we collect information on students and what needs to go in that directory. We may want to consider what goes in that directory, because that directory is typically information that we can give out. So we need to get our head around FERPA and how this works. Are we giving too much information in some of these processes we have? What can we release? What can't we release? And again, the school district may be approached in any number of ways. It could be through a warrant, an order, a subpoena, it could be email, it could be in person, it could be phone call, it could be lots of different things. So we just have to be ready, and the advice, I think, was call the superintendent, school, call legal counsel, and don't be pressed to make a decision on your own. And that's essentially the message I'm going to send. So, I don't know if you have any questions on that. I did spend a little time on definitions because even I get confused. Not even I'm not the brightest person in this room right now, but I mean, I sometimes when you're talking about migrants, immigrants, aliens, illegal, legal, it's sort of like excuses from school. Like, they all pretty much play a hand,
I do have some questions. So we know that ICE has been in the area. Have they attempted access to any schools in the region?
Not school records, no.
Okay.
Not students.
School buildings?
No. But feel free to ask questions. I'm still learning a little bit, and you could call this a lot of hype, but in my estimation, it's better to be ready than not. And so I think we're on a pretty good path. I did want to just talk a little bit about lead in drinking water. We're up for another audit, which is really exciting, especially for Mr. Wood. He loves those, and so does Alicia. And we have a controller's audit on lead in drinking water. And this is now every 3 years. They've lessened parts of lead that can be in water. It's interesting. We will have auditors' comments as a result. We will fall short on certain things, but it's nothing different than all the other schools that they're auditing according to that. We have already scheduled testing, updating signage and documentation. Knox is now complete with that, but we'll fill you in a little bit more. But we should have an audit, and we will have comments about the improvements we need to make and the deficiencies we have. So we're on top of that. Just teacher vacancies. We have quite a few interesting ones and hard to fill ones, and we're creating an engaging kind of brochure type document. We're going to send to colleges and hopefully interest some students and be creative about that. The programs and initiatives section of my report, we did do quite a bit of work thanks to Lorena, thanks to Mr. Hale. We have secured a student who was elected by the student council body for your consideration and for your approval. Lorena took it upon herself to check out some board member handbooks that pertain specifically to ex officio student members, and so we have put one together for you that is a good draft. You can take a look at it by clicking on that link, and also kind of dug up the Board of Education member handbook just to make comparisons between what the adults need to do and what the student needs to do. Any questions on those? There's a little bit more information on that a little later. I spent some time on New York State presidential orders. I don't want to talk that to death, but we also have to be concerned about the February 5th executive order restricting K-12's tools for supporting transgender students, the social transition or access to athletics. According to New York State, this does not affect students and individuals' rights in New York State. Title IX restrictions by the executive order on word sex, definition restrictions require an act of Congress. We're assured that these things can't happen easily. State law officers have robust protections for trans students in New York State, including the rights to use facilities, participate on athletic teams that align with their gender identity. Discrimination is unlawful. I'm not going to continue to read this, but this is another category that we also have to be vigilant about. We are urged to follow New York State law, New York State Education Department. If you have any questions on that. I hope it brings some sense of comfort that we're actually involved in these discussions now. I would say that we need to take a look at the district's diversity, equity, inclusion policy. We have one. I do have comments within that. I don't know how productive it would be to go in tonight about it unless you really want me to. But you can see here, anything in purple are my potential concerns about our policy, and maybe we should take this into account when we maybe have committee meetings. You can take a portion of committee meetings for these. Generally, everything in black print here, this is exactly our policy. I think is relative. I think it's okay, but there are things in purple that for me raised a red flag in a way. Are we doing enough, or are we really paying attention to our policy? does the board want to address that? Do they want to make changes? Or do they want us to do a better job of administering the actual policy? So I would say we're doing a fairly nice job of adhering to the policy, but again, those purple areas are something, in my opinion, we just want to take attention, make our attention a little bit more. Now, in budget personnel, a little bit about free and reduced lunch status. We have a reduced free and reduced lunch rate, meaning that fewer of our families are actually applying for this. We are going to work on increasing that because that directly affects state aid and income to our district in that way. So basically, if you wanted to read the larger print there, the first 3 bullets, the next bullets under those are intentionally smaller because I didn't think that they were as important information. But I think all the board really needs to know is that we think we know why this is a decrease, and we think we know what we need to do to raise that as well. As a matter of fact, Alicia had a good talk with the.
So the coordinators from have region policies who are free to reduce.
And they identified 700 students that are eligible who didn't apply. And it's easy to understand because we are a community eligibility provision school, so everybody is free. So why would they fill out applications? So we just have to take a different approach there. I think at one point the board asked if we could give an update on transportation. I did put some of my thoughts there. What I did was, if you were to control and click where it says feedback from 3 critical voices, those 3 critical voices are Alicia, Julia Behringer, and Rich Miles, who's the SDA grounds fellow. And they all had comments on how it's going with that. So I just took different categories and I put some salient points underneath each of those. Just lost my little place here. No, I mean, I lost. So, just try to. Speaking of the fellow I was talking about, Rich Miles just came in with his colleague here. And I just wanted to outline the financial benefits and the vision, the service benefits, safety benefits, fit that we have right now with SDA grounds. A little bit about the fleet consolidation, challenges that we have ongoing, but they are if we didn't have SDA grounds essentially at this point. I mean, that would be our challenge because right now everything seems to be moving beautifully. And since they're here, I don't know, Rich, would you like to say anything about the partnership we have? Sure. Otherwise, we're going to gloss over it, and you came for very few minutes.
Well, it's a long drive here. So I'm Rich Miles. How you doing? I'm here with Dave Kinley. Dave Kinley is the Vice President of Operations for New York State in SDA. So we have a partnership that we've forged with the Greater Johnstown School District, and it seems to be going very well. We have put together runs with Julia. Julia's put together runs. Julia Behringer. We've had a very successful startup, more so than we've had in years, in basically any of the places we work. This has probably been the most successful startup that I've ever been part of in the 5 years I've been here. We have a great bunch of people. They're doing a great job. We are on target to continue. I don't see ever there being an issue. I think that things are going to be very good for all of us for quite some time. I hope that we're doing as good of a job, hopefully a lot better than the last transportation provider you guys had. And I'll tell you this, I think that our people are dedicated and committed, and again, we're very, very happy to be here. Thank you.
I don't know if the board has any specific questions, but I will tell you on your comment, I I don't think we've canceled one run or had to subcontract with anyone.
I think that's true, actually. Julia's a rock star, I gotta tell you. And in all honesty, we're providing the people, providing the equipment, and providing the brawn. Julia's providing the brain, so I think that's a great thing.
I think there's still more we want to talk about, like the centralized bus stops. And at some point, we wanted to talk about transportation for all students. I think it's early right now to talk about that.
Describe that, transportation for all students.
We had talked about, within the city limits, having transportation for all students. If we had centralized bus stops, couldn't every kid really meet there? We're not quite there yet. I think we've ironed out the main focus that we needed to cover. But, we get transportation aid on only eligible students at this point. So we'd have to go through state ed to make sure that was possible.
Okay.
Among other things. Julia, is there anything you'd like to say or?
I don't think so, thank you. No, I'll just echo what you mentioned, Dr. Crenshaw. I think STA, I think what's been successful for this transition in service is that we took a very thoughtful approach in our planning in a very transparent way with key stakeholders to make the decisions that we did to phase in change over time. And I think having good partners has made this definitely successful. I would say STA has been very responsive to our needs. I no longer feel like I'm part transportation director. That's a good thing, because in the past it was many hands on deck to problem solve issues that were coming up with transportation. And just, I think as we move forward, we just have to make, if we want to expand transportation any further, again, that's just going to require some good planning and some research on how that would impact us financially as well. So.
And just to close, I think our biggest challenge has been that parents just don't sign up for transportation until later in the game. And we go to great lengths to try to get them to, but then I think this year, we got 80 requests alone after the year started, and that's not cool. That's not good. So we got to figure out better ways to communicate with parents or something, and get them to see what we're saying. And lastly, the solar project, we did have a meeting with.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I've been trying to read a lot of this and listen and think about, especially the study, when we looked at the runs that we had, last in years past, and the percentage of them that were full, or the utilization, I guess, of our transportation runs. I think that's something that I'd be interested in too. When you're talking about opening it to the possibility for more students to get on buses throughout the city. What percentage, what are the runs, what do they look like, what's the utilization, how many seats are still available? I'd be interested in that data.
That makes a lot of sense, and I actually think you could speak to that right now.
Sure, I mean,
or Rich, either one.
Yeah, however. So as far as we go, we're in a position now where we're expanding. We continue to expand. It's an ebbs and flows thing, right? We are we have the ability to take on more work. What you're talking about, picking up all the students, for us would be a great thing. It would be doable for us. And I'm sure that Julia would probably say the same thing. That we have to be careful how much we fill up the bus, because I think you don't want to sacrifice safety for crowding of the bus. You know what I'm saying? Filling up the bus is one thing, but if you get 60 kids on a bus that are absolutely, they're frustrated, they want to go home, or they want to get to school, or they want to get off the bus, it becomes an issue. You got to be cautious about that. But I think that we have the ability to continue to expand our service, and are continue to be very interested in doing that.
What could you say about ridership and utilization of each bus?
Well, Julie, how many people are on the buses? I think they're pretty full, right?
Ridership, I actually, other considerations are to maximize aidability. You have to watch the combination of students on a particular bus between eligible and non-eligible. And I think one of the things that we discussed as part of the ad hoc at the time, and we decided to put it off and go through this initial change. And don't forget, we made this change during a time where we opened Knox, we changed the start of our school day, we reconfigured grade levels. So all of that change happened at one time, was to think about how we schedule students, or is it more of like a transit system where you have almost a bus card and you identify yourself as a Johnstown student and be able to go to any one of the centralized bus stops and jump on? So I think there's some safety conversations that would need to take place on our comfort level of how students could access those bus stops as well.
So for us, I mean, we're very happy to have a partner like Greater Johnson School District, to be able to even, to broach these subjects with you guys, to talk a little bit about how we can better serve the community. And, we're very happy to do that. We're open to just about anything. Our sports trips are going well. We're doing, we have, everything seems to have been going fairly well. And I wish I could knock on wood right now, but because transportation is very fickle anyway. But we're doing a very solid job for the district.
Mr. Miles, I have a question for you
Yes,
too.
ma'am.
Do you provide service for Fonda Fultonville?
I'm sorry?
Do you provide service for Fonda Fultonville as well?
It depends on why you're asking. Yes, we do.
I just, the cards. I know that I think Fonda students use that sort of card.
They are, and I don't know, so we talked about this, Julie and I talked about this, and there's a limited success to that.
Okay.
But they're using it, they're using a different situation, but again, there's an awful lot, technology doesn't mean, we talked a little, ironically enough, we've had a little issue in another area, but technology is not what's driving the bus, for us, technology is very important, and we understand that. But for us, the drivers of the buses and the people in the buses are the most important thing. But you're right, Fonda is using some sort of a card that they're swiping in, the kids are swiping in. But with that comes an awful lot of change, right? There's giving a card to a kid and having a kid swipe on the bus every time. What if the kid loses the card? Or each time the kid swipes onto the bus, you're taking more time, which you're going to need more time at the stop to make that happen, to make that work. So there's adjustments that need to be made, but there's certainly a place for that, that's for sure.
And currently on all of our runs, we have two of us aid and the driver. And one of the other concerns that, was broached in researching this, was the multi-age on buses. So far, that hasn't been any issue, and
we still put the older students towards the back, younger towards the new, and we require the aide to sit somewhere in the middle of the bus. So, and we didn't have that previously. I mean, we couldn't sit here previously and say, we have stability in the drivers driving the bus, we didn't have aides on every bus, and now as part of the contract, we do. So, that's been another great benefit of this contract.
Any comments, Julia?
Going back to the cards, as far as attendance and them scanning cards, it's not the best for the first few weeks of school until the driver and monitor really get accustomed to the students, but they're doing attendance right now with the platform that we use for routing bus rate. The monitor has the tablet, which is actually giving the driver left and rights if it's a substitute driver, but they're also doing attendance on there. So I can go on and see who's actually on the bus, who's been dropped off, who still needs to be dropped off. All of that is available to me.
But I haven't, it's as strange as the first year I haven't, of being a superintendent with multi-age groups, but I haven't heard any complaints, but I don't know if there are.
Because you got a great provider.
Well, honestly, usually that issue will come to me, where, we will deal with that issue.
Well, I'll be honest,
Seeing the issue right now.
Dr. Fisher, we very much work with Julia. We have trained our aides and made sure that that's not going to be an issue. The intermingling of age groups on the buses, we were a little sketched out about that originally ourselves. But we trained our aides very well and the drivers very well. Worked very hard with Julia on that. It's working out very well actually.
Yeah, I'd be interested if you're hearing anything about it, because that is good.
So would I actually.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. I'm sure you would. Yeah, so there's a little bit of information there for you, but if you think, I've written a couple of notes down, we can always attack this, but I think moving forward, if we want a more complete ridership, if we want a number of things for our transportation department, we're gonna have to nail those down in terms of some objectives or goals. And let's not forget that Julia does have an entire objective document that's set, so one of those objectives could be some of those goals that the board has for us. And I'm done. I was just going to say that the solar project is on hold, but it's looking pretty good. I mean, we've had some good discussions with the town supervisor, code enforcement officer. I think we made all the proper touch points. And I wouldn't say it's dead in the water by any means, but we have a mutual respect going. And I think that in time, usually that pick up. Thank you for your patience on that report.
All right, thank you, Dr. Crenshaw. So now that we've got a full house, I think I'm going to go back up to presentations, and we'll have the presentation of the ABCD award winners. Dr. Crenshaw and I will be up front, and Joelle, are you going to lead? Okay.
The ABC Award was formed from the board's sincere desire to acknowledge those employees of the Greater Johnstown School District who are nominated by school community members because they go above and beyond the call of duty to make a difference in the lives of our students and to help them succeed. The board and district administration are pleased to recognize the following 3 outstanding ABC Award winners. First, we have Mr. Ronald Savoy. Mr. Savoy is a longtime technology teacher here at Johnstown High School, where students say he encourages them to be the best that they can be. Recently, a former student shared that as the only female student in a course dominated by males, she was sometimes picked on by her classmates. She said that Mr. Savoy noticed and told her, quote, "Don't let the way people view you be the way you view yourself. Some have clouded visions from their own lives." She says Mr. Savoy's words of wisdom not only helped her overcome her fears and ultimately succeed in the class, they have stuck with her, and she continues to apply these in life today. The Greater Johnstown School District thanks Mr. Savoy for the impact that he has made on so many Johnstown students over the years, going above and beyond the call of duty to provide a supportive environment and foster student confidence. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, we have Coach David Hayward.
He's not needed again.
Next. Finally, we have Miss Rachel Harrington. Mrs. Harrington is a dedicated first grade teacher at Pleasant Ave who doesn't hesitate to step up and lend a helping hand whenever support is needed. She has spent countless hours volunteering with Odyssey of the Mind, Johnstown Little League, and Fulton United Soccer Club, in addition to being a member of the district-wide safety committee. Parents appreciate that she takes the time to know each child personally, finds their strengths, and helps them build confidence in themselves and discover their abilities they didn't know they had. Parents say that she makes their children feel welcome and smart, helpful and brave, all while countless hours finding different strategies to assist students in overcoming their challenges for academic success. The Greater Johnstown School District is grateful for Mrs. Harrington's passion for community involvement and youth development, which goes above and beyond the call of duty. Thank you.
For a quick photo.
Oh, yeah. Just take a photo. Oh.
Do we want to step over here so we don't have a board on
Wherever
the
we
way?
want to go.
It's all beautiful background. Trees. Trees.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So for Coach David Hayward, he devotes an incredible amount of time to teaching student athletes the sport of bowling, sharing his knowledge and love of the sport with great enthusiasm. It is said that he can be found at the bowling alley 7 days a week, whether coaching a member of the school team, supporting local youth at a Saturday league, or providing tips and support to the community members. Coach Hayward is also known to support Johnstown student athletes beyond the bowling alley. He often attends other school events, reinforces the importance of academics, shares lessons around how to persevere through challenges, and offers other guidance on making life's adjustments for success. The Greater Johnstown School District is fortunate to have Coach Hayward on its team and appreciate what he does to go above and beyond the call of duty to motivate our students on the alleys and in life.
Thank you, everybody, very much. Next up, we have employee leadership reports. I believe that brings us to, let's see.
Before I start that report, I did want to comment on one of the things Dr. Crenshaw was talking about. I did just attend a leadership conference last week and talking about immigration enforcement, and we were giving the exact same advice, direction, and we sent that to our membership, basically. All the superintendent, FERPA still in place, and that every student, regardless of anyone's political beliefs, every student has a constitutional right to an education. Those are the three things that we really try to focus in on and share with our membership. Okay, so tonight, you already have some slides to look at. As you're well aware, the Johnstown Teachers Association provides opportunities for members to apply for yearly grants to secure items for their classroom that can't be obtained by traditional funding sources, which basically means the supply budget provided by the district. I usually present about half a dozen mini grants. However, this year only 2 mini grants were awarded. And you might be wondering why, and it's kudos to those 2 people sitting right there. The answer is communication and collaboration. Years ago, well before my time, the district and the JTA established a system of problem solving involving bi-monthly or monthly meetings between the superintendent and his designee and the union leadership. So under the tenure of many superintendents here in Johnstown over the years, not all, these liaisons, they really evolved to become essential tools, not just for problem solving, but for information sharing and cooperative planning, as our shared vision is often in alignment. So the open and synergetic dialogue during these meetings often leads to us heading off issues before they become a problem that needs a solution. So I think for both parties when I say how valuable these meetings have been. And so as a result of our cross-functional liaison conversations last year, district leadership actually provided some clear parameters about obtaining classroom supplies and curricular tools. So that ended up resulting in fewer unfunded classroom needs, which means many less mini grant requests. So the first one that we're going to talk about tonight is from Mrs. Allison LaPointe, who's a second grade teacher at Warren Street. She's a CT teacher. She was awarded a mini grant to purchase slant boards, that you can see in these photos, and sensory items for her students. The students used the slant boards during a variety of writing assignments to make the tasks more accessible, especially for those with occupational therapy needs. Among other benefits, the elevated surface of the slant boards makes it easier for students to transcribe information from the board, which results in much less frustration for those who might struggle with the task. Sensory items were also purchased. Little girl with a little green board over there with those mini grant funds. They help students regulate emotions and give them a positive and interactive tool to use when they're having a tough time and they need to take either an emotional or a sensory break. Their favorites include some brand new breathing boards. That's what that is. You breathe as you're following your fingers following the little paths. They can use those when they're working or when they just need a quick break in a quiet space. The students also love sensory putty that's used as a calm down tool. Mrs. LaPointe and her co-teacher, Mrs. Terrell, are grateful for the opportunity to secure these tools for the classroom to support their students, and of course, thanks to JTA. Then moving on to Mrs. Wallace in elementary music. She's both at Warren Street and at Pleasant Avenue School, and she is doing some wonderful things with her students this year. You guys did a great job hiring her. Among the activities that she's implemented is an enrichment program for Pleasant Avenue students. On Fridays, Pleasant Avenue's first grade students participate in an enrichment class where they play music games, they dance and move, they sing together, in addition to their regular music classes. As a special part of their enrichment experience, the first grade students will be working together to create a performance of the book Help Help Fish by Deborah Deason. So students are going to bring the story to life through music and movement. Mrs. Wallace used JTA funds to purchase 4 sets of wristband rainbow ribbons. I had to practice that at home for the students. And those are going to be incorporated into the performance, adding a unique visual effect. So whoever the ambassador is to Pleasant Avenue, listen up. Because Mrs. Wallace says she's hoping to hold a performance, actually she's planning on holding a performance in April, where the first grade students will perform for the pre-K and kindergarten classes. So she's also appreciative of the JTA for this wonderful opportunity. So thank you for your time tonight, learning not only about the mini grant awardees, but about how we've been able to leverage the evolution of liaison meetings over the years. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, board report, I don't have a lot. I just wanted to let everybody know that progress is being made on the superintendent search. Dr. Ziskin has been meeting with various constituency groups throughout the district over the last couple of weeks and has been collecting some good information to help us define our candidate profile, and I expect we'll be scheduling a meeting with him soon so that we can start to review that information. And I believe the advertisement has gone live now, or was soon to be going live for the position. So more to follow, but we're making some progress there. Committee reports. So we have 2 reports this month. We'll start then with the academic and extracurricular minutes.
So we met on Wednesday, February 5th, and we discussed several things. So first we heard from Mr. Hale on our shared decision-making ad hoc committee on cell phone usage. And he delivered an update on the progress of the procedure. We also talked about the P3 literacy initiative. Ms. Panton discussed a lot of different things going on within the district regarding Lexia Core 5 and Power Up Tier 1 instructional plan, and the new CKLA, ELA additions. Dr. Cranshaw talked with us about as the board meets more frequently, spending a little bit more time talking about curriculum we're using and some of the textbooks and even the reading materials that we are using in the near future. We also discussed the 6th through 8th amplified curriculum. We talked about how that was piloted in grades 6 through 8, including components of the instruction and the timeline for adoption. We talked about conscious discipline at Pleasant Ave. Mrs. Lent and Ms. Panton talked about how it demonstrates and teaches how to manage thoughts, feelings, and behaviors for students to deal with when in conflict and in difficult situations. All the staff and faculty at Pleasant Ave have been trained, and this will be a multi-year process, starting with year 1, with more members interested in learning more and moving forward. And that second professional development is scheduled for March 19th. We talked a little bit about the possibility of the optimization study of Knox Middle School and the desire for the study to measure continuous improvement. We talked about the Dean of Students, TOSA, our tuition agreement with Wheelerville school district, and the review of the program component as was presented tonight. Our next meeting is on Wednesday, June 4th at 5:30.
Thank you very much. We also had an audit, budget, and finance committee meeting. This was held on February 5th, in the district office. A little bit of old business was reviewed in regards to the Johnstown Comrie Associates tax certiorari issue. We understand the city isn't fighting the decision any longer, and that Comrie Associates is still challenging a portion of the assessment. Interest is accruing on the unpaid amounts. For each day the issue goes unresolved, but we do have the funds available to cover any determined refunds. So more to follow on that issue. Some new business was discussed. Quarterly reports were reviewed for October, November, December. ARP grants are discontinued now. These are the federal grants that were enacted during the pandemic. Benefit costs are up year over year. Operation and maintenance of plant is slightly up. Transportation is substantially reduced, largely due, as we heard this evening, to the partnership we have with SDA Browns. Expenditures are tracking according to expectations. A little bit side note on that is oftentimes when we're reviewing these month-to-month and year-over-year reports, it's important to recognize that timing factors into a lot of these, the status of these items. But everything seems to be tracking according to expectations. Same goes for revenue. The grant programs currently on track for the year. And there's an overall declining trend on grant amounts, something to keep track of. And recent presidential orders may impact some federal grants year to year, so we'll see how that evolves. Review of the treasurer's report. Received a rebate from the National Grid related to the EPC contract. Disbursements include taxes collected for Johnstown Public Library. As those of you recall, Johnstown Public Library is now a school district library, so we collect taxes on their behalf, but we do not operate them in any way, shape, or form. Budget transfers were made from the Transportation Fund to cover recent transportation costs. We added a revenue code for the EPC contract to track that income. Profit and loss statement for the school lunch program indicates we are currently at a negative balance, but this is largely due to timing associated with expenditures and collections. Tuition agreement with the Wheelerville School District was discussed, and recommending a 6-year contract. New York State SED QAP evaluation. Forget what QAP stands for.
Quality assurance program.
Thank you.
This is the
pre-K audit, right? So it was a universal pre-K program audit, and passed the audit with only one comment limited to concern regarding RFP contract notifications. So there's minimal corrective action required, and auditors did have compliments for the overall quality of the pre-K program. We've also heard this evening about the lead and water testing audit. It's required every 5 years. Recent DEC regulatory changes changed compliance standards. It's a very involved audit as it examines records against known conditions of physical facilities. The improvements will be made in our management process to comply. And audit summary results scheduled to be delivered at some point in spring. And we're trying to align all outlets, that is where water comes out of a spigot of some kind, all outlets, to get them onto a singular testing schedule. And obviously that can change depending on how changes to our physical facilities might come about through our capital improvement projects. And lastly, we reviewed the program component of the budget, which Dr. Crankshaw presented this evening. And our Our next committee meeting will be Wednesday, March 19th, 2025, at 6:30 p.m. at the district office, where we will review the full 2025-26 draft budget. So that is the report for that meeting. Any questions? We had some correspondence received since the last meeting. First is the OSC audit, City of Johnstown School District. Says, dear members of the Board of Education, Division of Local Government and School Accountability, the Office of State Comptroller selected the Johnstown City School District for an audit. The objective of our audit focuses on compliance with lab testing. District Superintendent, District Assistant Superintendent, and the Director of Facilities have been notified of this audit in a separate correspondence. At the conclusion of our audit, we will report on the audit's results and provide recommendations to help improve operations. As a member of the governing board, you will have a role in monitoring any corrective actions that need to be made. The examiner in charge of the audit, Jeremy Dudley, may contact you to discuss the testing process for lead in the district's drinking water. If you have any questions at this time, please contact me, the examiner in charge of the audit. Sincerely, Frank Slavitsky, with Auditors Free. Okay, so then we also had Johnson Public Library letter. States, dear library friend, your gracious and regular support of the library's annual fundraising efforts, creative, generous, and thoughtful basket donations sincerely appreciated. It is remarkable to think of the ways in which these baskets have grown since the library's very first basket raffle in 1997. Thank you for being a part of this huge success. The Johnson Public Library annual basket raffle fundraiser will be taking a pause in 2025, and no basket donations will be accepted. We look forward to resuming our basket fundraiser in the future. Received an email with regard to sidewalk conditions. The email was received from Angie Jones, stating that there were issues related to sidewalks around, I believe it was Pleasant Avenue School. And so I know our administration is on top of trying to make some corrections coming from that email. And we also received a similar email with regard to the care and maintenance of sidewalks in and around Pleasant Avenue School. All right, moving on, we are moving into the consent agenda. In an effort to expedite the business of the Board of Education, but in no way meant to diminish the importance of each item, a consent agenda may be used for the items of this section. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any one board member. Items not removed will be adopted by general consent without debate. Any removed items may be taken up either immediately after the consent agenda or placed later on the agenda at the discretion of the board. So the consent agenda includes item 8A, personnel, leaves of absence, resignations, miscellaneous creations, adjustments, and appointments. Consent action business, item 9. Subtopic A, which is approval of January 16, 2025 business meeting minutes. Item B is approval of January 27, 2025 special meeting minutes. Item C is the acceptance of warrants for December of 2024. Item D is acceptance of the Treasurer's Report for December 2024. Item E is approval of Medicaid compliance report. Item F is rescinding the interscholastic athletic merger with Wheelerville for modified boys and modified girls lacrosse in the spring of 2024-25. Item G is the rescinding of the interscholastic athletic merger with Fultonville Central School District for modified boys and modified girls lacrosse for the spring of 2024-25. And item H is the interscholastic athletic merger with Fultonville and Wheelerville for modified boys lacrosse spring 2024-25. And interscholastic athletic merger with Fultonville and Wheelerville for modified girls lacrosse spring 2024-25. And item J, authorization for petty cash funds. Consent agenda also includes consent action CSE, CPSE, 504 committee placements. So is there any item anybody would wish to remove from that agenda? Okay, so then I look for a motion to approve items listed in the sections of this agenda titled consent action personnel, consent action business, and consent action CSE, CPSE, 504 committee minutes. Well, second, March. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Thank you. All right, next up, we have action items. So first action item on the agenda is letter A, first reading, waiver of second reading, and adoption of revised policy 3421, Title IX, sex discrimination. Looking for a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent for a first reading, waiver of second reading, and adoption of revised policy 3421, Title IX, and sex discrimination effective February 13, 2025. Dr. Crenshaw, can you provide a brief summary of the changes?
Sure. We had one of our attorneys, Chris Honeywell, he advised that we revert back to the 2024 regulations of Title IX, which we had before we just changed them. And so stay tuned, because I think there's going to be another change on the horizon, because I don't know if that's actually been legitimized either. So we may be having this back in our agenda to revert back to the 2025, Title IX changes. So it's in flux, it's just confusing, and it's too bad. But
Okay.
New York State, again, is very strong in their Title IX protections, so it's basically what we've got.
Okay. Very good. So I'm looking for a motion to accept the recommendation. March, second, Beth. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Next, we have the tuition agreement with Wheelerville Union Free School District. Looking for a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve a tuition agreement made by and between the Greater Johnstown School District Board of Education and the Wheelerville Union Free School District Board of Education, whereunder the Greater Johnstown School District shall provide educational programs for children in grades 9 to 12 residing in the Wheelerville Union Free School District for a 6-year period commencing with the 2026-27 school year at the rate specified therein. The agreement is attached, so I look for a motion to accept. Well, second, Mark. Any discussion, questions about the agreement? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, accepted unanimously, thank you. Next up, we have the amended agreement with Fulmont Health Trust. Whereas Greater Johnstown School District is a participant in the Fulmont Health Trust, and whereas the Board of Trustees of the Trust proposes that the participants in the trust approve a revised trust agreement to clarify certain provisions in the original trust agreement and ensure the continued effective operation of the trust. Now, therefore, due deliberation having been had, be it resolved, 1, that the Greater Johnstown School District hereby agrees to the amendment of the trust agreement as presented by the Trust's Board of Trustees. 2, that the President of the Greater Johnstown School District Board of Education be and is hereby authorized to execute the attached amended trust agreement effective as of January 1st, 2025. That a certified copy of this resolution be prepared and sent along with the executed trust agreement to the Trust's attorney at the following address: Gleason, Dunn, Walsh, and O'Shea in Albany, New York. So the trust agreement is provided in the agenda. So I'd ask for a motion to accept the recommended action. Matt? Second, Will? Any discussion, questions about the agreement? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, accepted. I should say approved. Next up, we have HFM BOCES Board of Education nomination. Whereas 2 seats are expiring June 30th, 2025 on the Hamilton, Fulton, and Montgomery County's Board of Cooperative Educational Services, and whereas nominations must be received at the office of the clerk of Hamilton, Fulton, and Montgomery County Board of Cooperative Educational Services no later than Friday, March 14, 2025. Now be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Greater Johnstown School District nominates the following individual as a candidate for a position on the HFM BOCES board. The nominated person is Catherine Zajac of Johnstown, New York, and directs the clerk to submit the nomination accordingly. So I look for a motion to accept the recommendation. Okay. Second, Joelle. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Unanimous. You're approved. Thank you. Next up, we have action items personnel. This is the probationary appointment of Kyle Polidor as English Language Arts teacher. Looking for a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the probationary appointment of Kyle Polidor as an English Language Arts teacher in the secondary English tenure area, effective retroactive to February 1st, 2023, for a 4-year term, tentatively scheduled to conclude on January 31st, 2027, contingent upon successful completion of the probationary term pursuant to Education Law 2D. Effective February 1st, 2025, Mr. Polidor's salary will be at step A3, and the salary schedule plus $960 for 24 graduate credits at $40 each, prorated pursuant to the contractual agreement between the JTA and the Greater Johnstown School District. Fingerprint review has been completed, and receipt of the clearance certificate by the Commissioner of Education is on file. So we have a motion. Beth? Second? Joelle? Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. You're unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Next up, we have the amendment to the memorandum of agreement with the Johnstown Teachers Association for teacher on special assignment. Looking for a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the following resolution. Whereas the Greater Johnstown School District Board of Education adopted a resolution on March 16, 2023, approving a memorandum of agreement with the Johnstown Teachers Association for a teacher on special assignment in the full-time Dean of Students position for the 23-24 school year. And whereas said agreement was extended by resolution adopted on April 24, 2024, and whereas the parties wish to further amend said agreement to provide for the Dean of Students to work up to an additional 26-hour days during the school year and or summer. Now therefore be resolved, an amended memorandum of agreement between the Greater Johnstown School District and the Johnstown Teachers Association as set forth herein is hereby approved. So I look for a motion. Will, second. Mark? Any discussion?
I would say it makes sense that a teacher has a 26-hour day.
Okay. No further questions? Okay. All those in favor? Thank you. And next up, we have appointment of election inspectors for May 20th, 2025, annual vote. Looking for a motion to approve Greater Johnstown School District residents Jacqueline Sterin, Thomas Rule, Sally Ostrander, and Nancy Gill to serve as election inspectors for the May 20th, 2025 Board of Education election and budget vote, with each inspector to be paid the sum of $15.50 per hour as compensation for his or her service, and further authorizing the district clerk to fill any vacancies in these positions which may occur on or before May 20th, 2025, with Greater Johnstown School District residents whose names appear on the Fulton County Board of Elections Inspector Personnel list. Can I get a motion to accept? Seth? Second. Joelle? Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All right, next up we have board discussion items. This would be for revised policy 1220, Board of Education members nomination and election. The rationale for the revisions is provided below, which includes the fact that it was revised in response to amendments to education laws as listed. I'm not going to read them all. To require every district and BOCES to have at least one ex officio student board member effective July 1st, 2025. So I'm not going to read that whole explanation. Does anybody have any questions about the proposed change? Okay, moving along. We have the first reading of new policy 3311, notification of disclosure of employee disciplinary records. This is a required policy. This is the new policy. It was developed in response to the addition of subdivision 6 in section 87 of the Public Officers Law, enacted as chapter 302 of the laws of 2024, which mandates that New York public agencies, including K-12 school districts, notify employees when their disciplinary records are requested under the Freedom of Information Law. I believe this is what you were referring to earlier. So according to an advisory opinion issued by the Committee on Open Government on September 16th on this issue, although the text of the amendment does not make it clear when required notification must be made, stating only that it is required in the event that an agency is responding to a request. The memo accompanying the amendment contains some language which may explain the intention of the legislature on this question. The memo provides this legislation simply recognizes that these impacted public employees should have minimum notice when the personal information has been released to the public, suggesting that it is the legislature's intention that the required notification be minimal and be made to the employee after the records have been released. The intention regarding the timing of the minimal notification is strengthened by the following language from the memo. Quotes, this amendment would simply ensure that the public employees and personal information has been released to the public, that such affected employee would have notice of such release. The amendment requires that public agencies, including K-12 school districts, develop a policy regarding the required notification, but does not establish specific procedures for issuing the notification. We recommend that districts use their best judgment as to the most appropriate form of notification. While the text is silent on this matter, the Committee on Open Government states that notification should be in writing so that the district has evidence of compliance, and that notice by either regular mail or email is sufficient. Districts should make reasonable efforts to notify former employees and document their efforts to do so. Given that collective bargaining agreements often include provision on employee record handling, any policy changes that impact notification could be viewed as altering these agreements. Consequently, districts may need to work with union representatives in implementing the policy. So, Ms. Lisicki, could you give it to me back again, what it was you were suggesting, just so
Yes.
you have it in context?
Just that this is a minimum requirement, so the question was, would the board consider, rather than notifying the employee when the district has responded to the request, that the district instead notifies the employee as soon as they get the request, within a reasonable amount of time.
Yep.
So there, Mrs. Carpenter, there's a 5-day window that they have to respond.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
just out of courtesy.
And the other point though that you made was that, and this kind of, I think we need to kind of look at this a little bit more, because you mentioned counseling memos.
Because they're not disciplinary, right?
Right. However, in this policy that we have before us, it says, for the purposes of this policy, disciplinary records, or any record created in furtherance of a disciplinary proceeding, can be including but not limited to these 5 items. So I think I'd like to propose that we maybe look at this again, because I think that, depending on administration at any given time, counseling memos could be interpreted as disciplinary.
They're not,
records.
but yes.
And
They
this
just have
leaves
to
it
understand.
open, the included but not limited to leaves it pretty open. So I think I'd like to talk about that.
We should probably give the board better insight of actually what's in personnel folders.
Yeah.
And what are.
Right, and counseling memos are.
Yeah, so, counseling memos, but it it's clearly not discipline. It's important. As Nancy said.
And we also wouldn't be releasing it without attorney approval either. When the FOIA request came to me for employee records, I would be going to administration and they would contact school attorneys.
Yeah, anytime.
And they would look at what was gonna be released and say yes or no before we said, I wouldn't just automatically send something out myself.
So, since this is the first reading, how would the board like to proceed? Would you like to have information provided? Would you like
What kind of information?
recommended information?
Well, I think I'd like to maybe look.
This is definitely a recommended policy, but if you want to go closer.
Sure.
based
I mean,
on-
and there's other examples of policies that we could look at, correct?
Yeah, this is typically what comes from hearing one, vetted by attorneys. But after hearing specific maps and recommendations, I'll take a closer look.
Do we want to maybe have you just take a look and then come back next month with some possible tweaks to this, or do we want to send it to committee for review?
I think it might be great to go to a couple committees, and then we can kind of put it on the agendas. And we have, while we're still talking here, I'll just look up what the other committees are. You don't have to wait for it. Loretta's got it for you.
In March, you have audit, budget and finance and operations and planning.
That is, what date is that? Is that like 5th of March?
March 5th and March 19th.
We can squeeze that in there.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll send it to committee and we'll try to, work something out. Next up, some informational items. We have February 28th and March 2nd is the JHS Musical Freaky Friday. That'll be at the JHS Performing Arts Center. March 5th, we have the Operations and Planning Committee at 6:30 p.m. at the district office. March 19th, the Audit, Budget, and Finance Committee, 6:30 p.m. at the district office. March 20th, business meeting, 6 p.m., JHS, this location. And I think next we have a possible executive session. So I'd look for a motion to enter into executive session at 7:24 p.m. to discuss matters that may lead to the appointment of a particular person, discussing collective negotiations pertaining to JTA, JAA, CSDA, COA, Tri-County Substitutes Union, pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law, and discussing student records made confidential by federal law. March? Motion, second, Jen, all in favor? Thank you. We are now in executive session. Thank you for coming.